Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge and Company. It seems to me that in this election, the Democratic Party has become more of what it used to be, while the Republican Party is far different from the one I remember. So I asked my friend Tanya Melich to come and talk about this. She's a great feminist and political mentor, and she used to be an activist in the Republican Party. I always will remember seeing you on the floor of, I think it was the '92 Republican Convention, trying so hard to get a plank or change the plank, I can't remember, on choice, the matter of choice in the Republican platform.
Right.
Now they would just, I mean, there wouldn't be enough. It couldn't even be discussed, could it?
No, no. And the number of pro-choice Republicans, women, the group that I knew, they're all gone, in the sense that they're all gone from the party. There are a few around, but the few that are left, Olympia Snowe, for example, up in Maine, they don't fight it, and Olympia disappointed me greatly because she voted for Alito. She knew better. She did. Of course, Lincoln Chafee is no more. He's a Democrat. My friends, all the people I worked with for many years, from '76 all the way through '92, on platforms. It wasn't just '92.
Right.
We had the first fight in '76. They're all either Democrats or, like me, they're independents.
Did you talked about Olympia Snowe? She's not up for re-election.
No,
but Susan
Collins is.
Yeah.
Right.
And does she is she similar to Olympia?
No, she's a much more conservative person, and she is also much more in tune with the White House, and she is a very close friend of Senator Lieberman.
Oh, good. You think that Senator Lieberman is going to be asked to leave the Democratic caucus?
Since I am not a Democrat, I wouldn't even want to dare to predict what will happen.
Right. I just remember the party of Rockefeller, right? Eisenhower, civilized. What
fiscal
do you call
conservatives,
fiscal conservatives,
internationalists,
social,
and socially responsible.
Right.
I was down in Gettysburg College teaching 2 weeks ago, and I went to the Eisenhower farm. And for your viewers, if you want a nice weekend, go down there. And I walked through and read what Eisenhower had said in his last address about the industrial complex, the military, and I looked at some of the decisions he'd made. It's a different world.
Totally,
he would have been appalled by the neocon idea that we should build an empire around the world and protect our brand of freedom.
Right, it is. It's really terrible. So you are now an independent voter.
Yes, yes.
Do you think most of the independent voters are people who would have been members of the older Republican Party?
Many of them would, because many of them are people who are fiscal conservatives, who have been appalled by the debt increases, the spending of not only this Bush White House, but you can go back to Reagan. Reagan had a huge deficit. So you have these old line balanced budget people who can't figure out what happened. Then you have people who are conservative in style and have been very disturbed by what they see as McCain's erratic behavior in style. I'm talking style only now. Obama is a very, very conservative man, the way he behaves, and his campaign has been quite conservative. And I think for that over 65-year-old voter, many of them who just stopped being Republicans and changed their registration in places like Ohio, in Virginia, you know, the swing states, I think Obama has done better recently because they feel more comfortable with him. And I think Sarah Palin has scared them, has really scared them.
Well, how did you feel as as an expert, basically, on women in politics? I mean, you really wrote the book originally. When was it? 96?
96, and then I did an update in 98.
The Republican War Against Women.
Right. Two things. My first reaction was terrific. A woman on the Republican ticket, that's great. And then I began to find out what she was like, and I felt that after reading a little bit about her, that she had become the new Phyllis Schlafly, that's who she is. And I had another reaction because in those early years, in the 70s up through the 80s, when we were fighting about feminist issues, this wing of the Republican Party wanted women to stay home. They could be mayors maybe, but the idea of a woman representing the far religious right, or as we now call them, elite fundamentalists, that was no place for a woman making decisions about sending people off to war and so on. So there's been a transition, and I thought, well, finally, this Republican Party that was so, or that wing of the party that was so much against what my colleagues and I believed in, now says it's okay for a woman to be president of the United States. So that was the first reaction. And then I looked at what she stood for, and it took me a very short time to realize that she represented all the things that I had fought, or she was against the things that I fought for women, whether it was equal pay for equal work, or pro-choice, or you'll have to help me out, I can't even remember, creationism, all of them, all the things that were part of why I became a feminist in the early 70s. And I realized, yes, she was a female, but she didn't stand for the things that I believed were necessary to move women forward.
You wrote a piece, and it was very interesting, about the fact that she has children. How many children does she have?
5.
That she's working out of the home.
Right.
Is her husband staying home? No. As a matter of fact, he even travels, doesn't he? He's away for months. So who's home, and who's paying for it? And what's the position of the Republicans on,
or Sarah? You have to be very careful because Sarah has a different position on many, many things.
But what we're talking about is child care.
But the platform, and you will understand this, Ronnie, is that I remember the issue. Nixon tried to keep both wings of the party together, and the wing of the party that Sarah represents wasn't that powerful at that time. But there was a major bill passed with Javits, our senator from New York, Republican senator, and Humphrey, providing governmental assistance for child care in '72. And it was the first, I remember how excited we all were that both the Democrats and the Republican had agreed that women needed, or families needed, child care, and that the government was going to help with child care facilities. I mean, you were around then, you know this as well as I do. And lo and behold, Nixon vetoed that bill. That was before Roe v. Wade, and that was an indication of what was going to grow into an attitude that women shouldn't be helped.
Why did he veto it?
Because there was a growing group within the Republican Party that were
felt the traditional family structure?
Government should not be involved exactly in the family structure. That, yes, child care would be okay, but it should be done privately, that the government shouldn't be involved in any way.
Who were the political leaders who came out of that part of the Republican Party? Do you know? Do you remember?
Well, we had Jim Buckley. Remember Jim Buckley?
That's right.
That was the beginning, 1970. That election of Jim Buckley, Charlie Goodell, and Congressman Ottinger from Westchester. And Jim Buckley was elected, and that was the beginning of the change that came with the rise of George W. Bush and Sarah Palin.
Yeah.
And Sarah Palin, I think one needs to recognize, I noticed the Times said it the other day, but she is a natural pop culture TV personality. And if she were smart, what she would do is give up politics, get herself a smart entertainment lawyer, come to New York, get herself a show like Mike Huckabee, or even get on Mike Huckabee's show, and give up politics. But I fear that's not what's going to happen.
In her mind, no. But does she oppose enhancing and developing more child care opportunities?
She doesn't talk about it. She talks about how she believes that the family can figure out a way to take care of their brood, and she does this herself. She's got her kids traveling with her, including the little one who's, what, 6 months old now. The only one that isn't, of course, is her son, who was in the army, going, maybe he is in Iraq by now.
Yeah.
The base of all this is that government should not be involved in people's private decisions, that this is all personal, and that there shouldn't be such a thing as much government help. But the interesting thing about her is in the last week, you may have noticed, she's begun to talk to the press. She's begun to contradict some of the things that McCain is saying. She came out against too many robocalls the other day. Now you can say, did she do this on her own, or did the campaign tell her? But she's clearly a very strong personality. There's another thing in terms of the children. When she was first preparing for her debate against Biden, she was in Philadelphia, and I don't think she had her kids with her. And she wasn't doing very well, apparently. The next thing I read was she had moved to Sedona, and the whole family had come down. And once she was there with her family, and they changed the people who were working with her, they got people who had worked with Bush 1 and with Reagan, and it became obvious that it was let Palin be Palin. And I think that the strategy is very clear that if they lose, that she is their heir apparent for 2012, in the same way when Ronald Reagan gave his speech in 1964 to the convention, the Goldwater Convention in San Francisco. Reagan brought them to their feet, almost in the way Obama did in 2004 with the Democrats. And consequently, I think that there is an attitude that she can become, in her own right, if they lose 4 years from now.
But there's so many negatives about her. I mean, I was looking at the Times, I think, has a chart about who's improved, whose ratings have gone up, and then whose ratings have in negative, both positive and negative.
Her favorabilities.
Her negatives are plus a lot. So do you think the Republican Party has any chance? I mean, I guess there's an ebb and flow to the life of parties, don't you think? Why do I feel more comfortable with the Democratic Party now than I did during the second Clinton year campaign?
Well, I think that you feel, I have a different take, but I think the reason you feel this way is that the Democratic Party is finally united. And I think that the Democratic Party has, over a period of time, become very practical, which is what the Republican, the wing that I was. We were not, the moderate Republicans, we were not ideological. We were practical. It was, we have a problem, how are we going to solve it? And the dynamic changed with the election of Reagan, and it was all about, at least on social issues, and also, I would say, with supply side on economic issues. It was ideological. And then when we got to W, we got the neocons, and it became ideological on foreign policy. So when you look at the present Democratic Party, it's a party that says we need to fix things. And I think that that's how you get the independents and people like me, because it's a future-oriented party. Now it's a party that is not arguing over whatever, because Democrats seem to argue, it seems to me, more than Republicans do.
But it seems, it's funny, I was just thinking about the social issues. Those have been the most polarizing, I guess, same-sex marriage and the right, a woman's right to choose. They've really not made the family structure of working women an issue anymore. No, that's gone. Not that they want to help care for them, but anyway. But do you think if we weren't talking about gay marriage and choice, that they would not be as... I just don't understand how this happened to the party. I don't understand when the American public became strong enough people in this country became strong enough to really take over that party.
It happened in the 70s, and it happened at a time when the country had just had a nervous breakdown over Watergate. And Jerry Ford would probably been elected if he hadn't pardoned Nixon. And Jerry Ford almost won. And a very significant thing related to New York State is that the vice president under Ford was Nelson Rockefeller of New York. And these people that we're describing came in, these fundamentalists.
With a vengeance, didn't
And they pressed for Bob Dole. And I don't think, and Bob Dole was anti-choice and from Kansas, and the argument was that you can beat Jimmy Carter with a big vote out of the Midwest. Well, that wasn't so, because Americans like now were really mad, and they were going to vote for almost any Democrat. But the argument that pushed Dole into that, if Jerry Ford had been a little bit stronger, and he has there's a book out about things after I'm dead that's been written by the Daily News bureau chief, that if Nelson had been on the ticket in '76, then Jerry Ford would have won, because Nelson would have carried New York State, and the dynamic of what would have happened to the party would have been very different. Now, to the present time, it's an interesting question. If you have students of history watching this, go back and look at what happened to the Whigs. There is a possibility that the McCain-Palin party is so far out of touch with the reality of people's lives that the party could fall and a new party, a new conservative party, could develop.
And the difference between the libertarians and these very conservative Republicans, what is it?
Ideological over God. There is a almost medieval attitude among people like Sarah that they have been called by God to serve America, and that America has been maybe not ordained by God, but we are in a special place, so that if you have been selected by God through the political process to become the vice presidential candidate.
How can we argue? Weren't you astonished when she said, when he called me up, I didn't blink? I'm so unused to people who have such confidence. I can't believe that she has as much confidence as she appears to, but I think she does.
Well, I have 2 points on that. One, I grew up in southern Utah.
Yeah.
I had friends. I grew up with people like Sarah Palin. And when you go out and you deer hunt with your dad and you sleep out in the desert with the rattlesnakes, Sandra Day O'Connor talks about this. You develop a self-assurance, and if you read about how her father trained her in the woods and all the things that she did, that doesn't surprise me. But the second point is that she didn't just come out of nowhere. This group, you want to call them the Values Voters Leadership, the Dobsons, they used to be Robertsons, not so much anymore. Jerry Falwell is dead, Mike Medved. There are a whole group of them, Phyllis Schlafly. They've been meeting off and on for years. Ever since they really took control of the social agenda of the Republican Party in 1980. And when Sarah ran in 2006, yes, she did defeat the establishment Republican Party up there. But she's Billy Graham's son, Franklin Graham, has a home up in Alaska, and for the last 2 years, he has been the speaker at her prayer breakfasts. And when you begin to look at it, you realize that wing of the party, once it was clear Brownback wasn't going anyplace, Huckabee wasn't going anyplace. They didn't particularly like John McCain, and Robertson had endorsed Rudy. You may remember that. So when she got the call, she knew she would get the call because those groups had been backing her for a very long time. And again, if you want to know more, look at the Anchorage newspapers. Political reporters up there have been having a ball.
Yeah, I can imagine. It must be wonderful. It's interesting when you mentioned the other candidates. I mean, weren't you appalled that here are people running to be president of the United States on the Republican Party ticket and they don't believe in evolution?
Well, I have one even worse than that.
What?
Bobby Jindal, the governor of Louisiana, is a graduate of Brown University, and his major was biology, and he is now supporting a evolution and creationism curriculum.
So why aren't you a Democrat?
Because I found that the political dynamic in the Democratic Party was just too difficult. After spending my entire grown-up life as a political professional in the Republican Party, to try to learn who were the precinct leaders, who worked with whom, I thought, this isn't my role. I'm too old for this. And so what I've become is a speaker and an analyst, and I write. And it has freed me from the politics of the Democratic or Republican Party.
I think that you've touched on a very important point, is that underneath it all, the structure of the Democratic Party still, in some places, needs to be changed, especially in the state of New York. But we won't get into that discussion now.
And that's not my role. You know, the Democrats have to deal with that.
So what do you think is going to happen in this election? And aren't you, well, tell me. I mean, it was one thing to have a woman be nominated. I agree, it's terrific. But we can't say that that's necessarily why women are going to support her, because she doesn't really support women's issues, right?
This is this thing that used to drive you and me crazy. They say, oh, we're going to put a woman on the ticket. And I say, well, let's see what she stands for. If this is a woman who doesn't support helping women move forward, what does that mean? That doesn't mean anything.
So what about Barack Obama and the Democratic Party? Do you think that he's going to be able to win this election?
I think he's able to win this election, but I looked at Real Clear Politics that lists all those polls just before I came here, and the margins aren't big enough in places they should be big enough. 6 and 7% in a state like Virginia that they hope to win. I think it's 3%, 4% down in Florida. It's not big enough. You start with what Kerry wins, and maybe he wins, he being Obama wins Iowa and maybe Colorado and Virginia, and it's over with. Obama does not have to win Ohio. But what we all know, the McCain campaign has become schizophrenic, or McCain is schizophrenic, and I don't mean as that in a clinical way. I just mean that he's all over the lot, and the label erratic is true. And so the McCain campaign is doing two things. They are doing the dirtiest campaign we've seen since the last dirtiest campaign with the robocalls, and there's a reaction against it. And I think that, as we know, as you get closer and closer to the weekend before the 4th of November, I mean, I don't know what they will hit him with. And because McCain's selection of Sarah Palin has made a lot of people uneasy, particularly the older, and it's white women, again, you know, the Bush W, second time around, won because he was able to convince enough white married women with kids that
it was going to be good.
It was fear. So that's the fear tactic, and I think it's very serious.
They've been talking a lot about what they call the Bradley effect. And there was an interesting article by a member of his staff in the Times a couple of days ago, where he said that we've really misunderstood what happened in that election. How do you think we're facing the question of race?
I don't think for most people race is the issue. I think that what the McCain campaign is doing is trying to just make people afraid of this man with this funny name. I think that's what they're trying to do. But on the other side, Obama has calmed a lot of people down, and there have been the Colin Powell endorsement was stunning, not because of the endorsement, but what he said in the endorsement. And he's a man, Powell, who's been friends with McCain for years. They're the same age and so on. So I don't, on the Bradley effect, I think it was taken way out of context. It was 82. It was a race in California. And as that article pointed out, the big fight was over guns.
Right, and a referendum on the ballot.
If you have a person who just can't vote for someone because of the color of their skin, they long ago went with McCain. Or if they're now unsettled about Sarah, because many people realize she's running for president, then what they're doing is maybe not going to vote the top of the ticket.
Do you think people really think she's running for president? I think people are so astonished that she's running for vice president.
I think with the internet and all of the 24/7 media around, that anybody who has said, I'm going to vote in this election, who bothered to register and had never voted before, is not stupid. They know that John McCain is 72 years old and that there's always a possibility something might happen to him, and that Sarah Palin could be the new president of the United States. And I think that has an effect.
Yeah.
I do not think it's just...
But don't you think it has a negative effect, not a positive effect?
Has well, we know that because we're looking at these favorability rooms.
Right.
When you look at her, how she peaked right after the Republican convention, because she was a new phenomenon. She still is. That's what I said. She ought to go on television, get her own TV show.
You've been involved in politics way before we had the internet, right? And now since. Yeah. What does it do to your life?
Oh, I think the internet is a neutral tool in that it can be done. It can do things really well, and it can do things very badly. And I think that Americans are finally learning how to make a judgment about when I get whatever I get on my net. Is that really truthful? Where did it come from? And it will take maybe 1 or 2 more elections before it sorts it out. But I think overall it allows people to participate in a way they never did. The YouTube phenomena is incredible. You get mad about something, Ronnie, you can go out and organize your own campaign, right?
It's wonderful. It is incredible. Right. And I guess that's in a way what Barack Obama did.
Yes.
He did. Well, thank you very much. We've come to an end of this half hour, and you haven't lost your enthusiasm for politics in general.
I'm a political junkie.
Good. Thank you, Tanya Melich.
Thank you.
If there are any people you'd like to hear and topics you'd like us to explore, please let me know. You can write to me at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or you can go to the website at cuny.tv and click on Contact Us. I look forward to hearing from you.